Hey there, dog lovers. Welcome to the R plus K9 podcast. Today, we are diving into a question that's on the minds of many pet parents. When does training end? My name is Anna, and I'm a trainer at R plus K9. So let's talk about this common question. When does training truly stop? We are going to discuss the science behind the learning stages, the importance of motivation, and why training is a lifelong journey. So, before we dive in, let's review the four stages of learning we use in dog training. Acquisition is the initial stage where the dog learns a behavior and associates it with a reward or an outcome. The second stage is called fluency. The dog can perform the behavior consistently and reliably. The third stage is called generalization. The dog can perform the behavior in different environments and in different circumstances. And the last and fourth stage is called maintenance. The dog retains the learned behavior over time, even without regular practice or reinforcement every time. So let's use an example for this, right? Let's talk about Leave It. Leave It is the cue we give our dogs at R plus K9 and our students' dogs when we want them to leave something alone and then immediately look into our eyes. So how I would teach this, right, in the four stages, in the first stage, I would have to teach them impulse control in a specific situation. For example, I would place kibble in my hand or the floor, and I would reinforce the dog every time they left the kibble on the ground alone. Once they become consistent with this, I will attach a cue to it, meaning I will say, leave it. They will look away from the food, and I will reinforce that behavior. That is when we enter the second stage of learning, fluency. Now, I know that in our training facility or in your home, if you're practicing this at home, every time I say that word, they will leave that thing alone and look at me. This is where lots of us, by the way, get frustrated, is we stop here and then we take our dog out in the world and we expect them to understand that leave it means also other dogs, squirrels. Oh, and by the way, this applies in the dog park or on our everyday hike or at the farmer's market if it's dog friendly. And they should not sniff at all the things that just smell so exciting. So, generalization is the phase where we spend the most time. You need to spend time making sure that my dog understands when I say leave it, it doesn't matter what the thing or being is, they need to disengage from it and look at me. And it doesn't matter if it happens in my living room, the training center, on a hike, or in our neighborhood, the same behavior still means the same outcome. Once you accomplish that, and you could see probably why this takes the longest, we enter the last stage of learning called maintenance. This is where I can pretty confidently say leave it to my dog in any situation, and I trust that they will disengage from the thing or person or being and look back at me. Once you enter that stage, you really only reinforce them maybe every fourth or fifth time, and in between you will just say, good job, buddy, and you both move on. This is the goal. This is where all of us want to be with all of these training cues and behaviors, right? Is when it's almost effortless. So, an example for this could be a 2 to 3 year old child. So, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the science behind this, but just so that we do say it, a dog an average dog, I should say, with some exceptions, at its peak mental performance is roughly equivalent to a 2 to 3 year old child's mental capacity. And I like to use this example because even though I don't like humanizing dogs, I do think all of us know kids, all of us been kids, and some of us even have kids. So this example is relatable. We know what we would trust a 2 to 3 year old child with and what we wouldn't trust them with, and what would we expect and what would be a reasonable expectation. So the same for your dog, right? And it may help you put that a little bit more in perspective of what you should expect them to do in any of these stages of learning. So if I would ask my very, very sweet but 3 year old youngest sibling to go ahead and brush her teeth, and there wouldn't be a story time after, before bedtime, I don't think she would brush her teeth, right? There is no positive outcome from it. Now, probably I could scare her into brushing her teeth, but I don't think I would get much good big sister credit for that, or some of you parent credit for that, right? So, what I'm saying with that is even balance trainers have to do certain things to get those behaviors consistently. Even if it's not a treat, it may be punishment or fear of the punishment. However, if I would ask my youngest sibling to brush their teeth and there's no story behind, like I said, she wouldn't brush their teeth, right? So, teeth brushing is not a behavior that's fun in and of itself. We do it because we have to, we learned it, we maintain that behavior, hopefully ourselves, and it becomes a habit. This is the same with our dogs. If they are doing a behavior that they wouldn't necessarily naturally want to do in that moment, there has to be something that is reinforcing it so that it stays a habit. And over time, that reinforcement can be occasional. It doesn't have to be every time, right? Nobody reads me a bedtime story at this point just for brushing my teeth. But the reinforcement is the lack of dental visits. So this is the same for your dog. Except, again, they are 2 to 3 year olds' mental states for life. So let's talk a little bit more about why this is a lifelong journey. Because that's what we are here for today, is talk about when does this really stop. This is great, okay, they're acting like a child forever, not super promising in some ways, and they need this reinforcement, and oh my gosh, there are 4 stages to go through. It's sounding a little bit complex and overwhelming for some of us, I'm sure. And unfortunately, my answer to when does training stop is it never truly stops. Even the best trained dogs need occasional reinforcement to maintain these behaviors. So, from an animal's perspective, like we said earlier, if they want to eat that sandwich off the ground on the side of the road, and you don't give them anything that is fun or that they want if they choose not to, they will just go ahead and eat that sandwich, even if they know better. Because if over time there's nothing in it for them, they will just go back to what's most reinforcing to them, right? So if a dog maybe excessively sniffs at the ground because they are a hound mix and they are really into smelling all the fun things, in order to break that behavior so that you can get their attention in certain situations, you will have to offer some type of reinforcement that they find valuable. Otherwise, they will just go back what's most fun to them. So, what I also want to highlight here, just for a second, is this applies to us humans as adults too, right? So if you try to put this in a human context, even professionals need to do continuing education to maintain their positions. For example, medical professionals have to take certain number of continuing education hours to maintain their licensure. So do flight attendants and pilots. And I would like to remind you that we did not receive a driver's license for life either. So why do we expect our dogs to perform so perfectly every time, even without the maintenance factor? I truly believe that some of this may have come from social media and the popularity of dogs on social media specifically. Because what happens in social media is people take a peak performance moment from their dog's life and they publish it. And so you look at that 30 seconds, 5 minute, 10 minute, doesn't matter, clip of that dog, and oh my goodness, that dog is doing amazing. But what you don't see is all the moments that they did not succeed, or maybe it wasn't as pretty, it wasn't as perfect. And that is a very important part of the picture we are missing. So, just like with everything else on social media, I encourage you not to believe everything you see and take all those posts with a grain of salt. Most of us could take a couple-minute clip of our dogs where they are just perfect. Maybe I don't even need a treat. They are just doing the perfect and the right thing in our human society. But that wouldn't be really truthful. So make sure you don't expect a robot out of your dog. They are gonna stay a dog forever. And that's, I would argue, mostly a great thing and sometimes a little bit frustrating. So another thing I also want you to pay attention to is when you're getting your dog trained, it's very important that you also understand how to train those things or how to maintain those things at least, right? This is why at R Plus K9 we have chosen to offer free classes twice a month for all of our day training graduates for a whole year after their graduation, because we believe that we want these results that we achieved with your dog in day training to last. And that means we have to make sure you're comfortable at maintaining those behaviors with your dog. So otherwise, they will just fade away. So I also want you to think of this dog-human partnership as really a team between you and your dog. You're the leader of that team because most of us are adults by the time we get dogs. So the safety and the overall leading skills fall on us and responsibility, but we are still a team. Without our dog's performance, even if you're the most perfect handler, but you just didn't teach your dog, it's not gonna work. And with the most perfect dog, if the handler is not up to par, it's just also not gonna work. So, what I would encourage you to think about is to avoid these unrealistic expectations based on social media portrayal of perfect dogs, or maybe it was just a dream, or maybe it was an internal thing that you thought you could get to and it's taking longer than you thought, or maybe your dog is just not the dog that can do that. So you will never get where you want it to go, and that's okay. We have to normalize that not all dogs are capable of all of the same things, and them not being able to do what you wanted them to do doesn't take away from their value. So, what we've learned today is we discussed the 4 stages of learning and how you unfortunately cannot skip any of them to get to just a shortcut to get to maintenance, the last stage, where it's almost effortless. We talked about how all of us in this lifetime have to put some effort into maintaining certain behaviors, otherwise, they will fade away. And I really wanted to talk a little bit about realistic expectations and why we need a motivator and a drive for the dog to do certain behaviors. Otherwise, it will just simply not be worth it to them. So, training is a lifelong journey, not a destination. By understanding the stages of learning, maintaining regular training, you can really build a strong bond with your dog and enjoy a fulfilling partnership where you both have clear understanding of each other's desires and needs and wants. Have a great day, guys, and happy training.